being recorded before. All right. So a little while ago, I sent out an email to everyone on this distribution list saying, "Hey, let's have an open Q&A and just open it up to any questions that you had." But I looked at my list and I didn't have any questions that you came with. So maybe everybody has got it all and you're all squared away. Can everybody hear me? If you can raise your hand on the raise your hand button there, let me know if you can hear me. All right, I can see people raising their hands, so you don't have to raise them anymore. I've got it. So here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to say let's do a little Twitter chat. So if you have any questions about Lean or Agile or Kanban and all the PMI ACT even, send me a tweet at @Joseph_Flahiff, and it'll show up right here in the @mentions column, and we'll see what that looks like. See if the questions come through. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I just got off the phone with Jeff Liker. So Jeffrey Liker is the author of the book called The Toyota Way, and we were talking about some of the similarities and the differences between what's being done in the software environment these days and what is done at Toyota. Some of the similarities and differences that he's found and we've both seen, and it's interesting to see the differences. I'm going to limit my screen here to just this one column. No, that's not what I wanted you to do. Somewhere there's supposed to be a zoom button here. There we go. All right, so send your tweets out. @Joseph_Flahiff, and it'll come up in this column. It's interesting stuff. They're experiencing actually a lot of the same issues that I'm seeing as I travel around talking to people, working with organizations. One of the, probably the most fundamental problem that I see in Agile implementations, and that's what this webinar series is all about. It's about Agile implementations and what works and what doesn't work. One of the things that I see that's a problem is people tend to go to something like Scrum and see, because about 80%, 75-80% of the people who are doing an Agile process right now are using Scrum. So I use that as my de facto. Most people are probably doing something like this, and even the people that aren't doing Scrum probably are doing Scrum. They just that people approach it like the problem-solving thing, right? They have a problem. They're not delivering projects on time. They're not delivering software on time. And because they're not delivering the software on time, they look around for something that is delivering software on time. Oh, these people who are doing Scrum over here, they're over here delivering software on time. So let's use Scrum. So they go out, they get some training, they take the 2-day Scrum Master class, and now they've got Scrum Masters. Even though they have no experience, they're officially called a Scrum Master. And they take this Scrum Master and they put them in charge of a project. The Scrum Master then says, these are the rules of Scrum. This is what we will do. Therefore, we are now doing Scrum. And their projects become successful. And they do. They do. Working with one client right now, and they have been marvelously successful with using Scrum. Because it does solve a lot of problems that you run into with traditional software development approaches. But what wouldn't be successful when you can fully dedicate people to one project only, and you can have a fully dedicated project sponsor that they call a product owner, and that you have lots of co-location, everyone's sitting in the same place. These are logical things that people kind of go, duh. Of course, you're going to have better projects when you can do those things. The problem that Jeff and I are seeing, him in the world of Lean, and myself in the world of software development and Agile teams in particular, is that that's as far as they go, right? They find a tool, in this case Scrum, in Jeff's case Lean. They find a tool and they land on it and say, this is what we're going to do, solve some problems, and that's as far as they go. So they see some improvements, but over time, it's going to erode. It's just the nature of life. It's the law of thermodynamics or whatever, that we tend to go towards attrition. Things tend to compile, get less integrated. So the problem is, sorry, I was just checking on questions from y'all. The problem that we run into is that people aren't looking at, why did Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland develop Scrum back in the 90s, which is when they developed it. Why did they do it, and how did they do it? They developed Scrum back in the 90s because they had some problems with A, project managers that they were dealing with, B, projects coming in late, and the nature of software projects being such that people understand that I'll know it when I see it, is the approach, right? That you don't really know what you want until after you've got it in hand. So they looked around and saw Lean and said, we'll apply some of these tools from Lean to solve our problems. But the problem that is really foundational to that approach is the guys that came up with it had it right. What they did was recognize a problem and looked for a solution, looked for something that would work better. And this is me. What will really make it better, what will really improve your organizational culture, is not implementing some solution, but it is changing your culture. And that's really what I'm all about these recent days. It is, Agile is great, it's nice, but if you don't fundamentally change your culture from an organizational structure that has created the problems that you currently have to one that is a continuously learning organization, you will continue to have those problems. You'll go out and you'll grab Scrum and new problems, but in the end you will go back to having problems, the same problems, because you haven't really addressed the underlying problem of the culture. So two great books for you to read if you're looking for something to read. I have them on audio because I fly a lot and I listen to the audiobooks. So I have a lot of time to do that. The Toyota Way and the Toyota Kata. So highly, highly recommend both of those books. The Toyota Kata, I really am excited about. I'm about halfway through that one. I've read the Toyota Way about 50 times. That's one of those that you just go, this is great stuff. But the Toyota Kata gets into this concept that I'm talking about culture, organizational culture of learning. And if you can, this is really important to me. If you do not create a culture where continuous improvement, it's Kaizen, there's continuous improvement, is part of the culture of everything you do, then you will have the same problems going forward that you have right now. Here's an example. In the Toyota Kata, he talks about one of the things that you use in a Toyota production system plant is called an Ondan cord, right? It's a cord that if you pull it, it stops the line from going forward. And you pull it whenever you have a problem, right? So the question is, how often do you think that line gets pulled? I'm going to poll you guys on this question. All right, folks, make sure you're awake out there. I'm not seeing the tweets. So if you were in a production plant, and just put the answer in your questions box here. If you were in a production plant at Toyota, for example, and they had this on-don cord that anytime you saw a problem, you would stop the production line. How many times per day do you think that production line would get stopped? Type the number in the questions space of how often you think that it would get pulled. Go ahead and just do that right now. 3, 5, 8, 7. Brad. You were in class. You know this story already. I'm not going to tell your number. So then Brad had the number right, and you probably can't see the number. I'm not sure if you can see those questions or not. The number is 1,000 times. That line gets pulled 1,000 times per day. And then the question is, and people are shocked at that, but that tells me a couple of things, right? It tells you a couple of things. That there's a culture there that says it's okay to say there's a problem. Often in our cultures, in our organizations, it is not okay to say that there is a problem. It's looked down on, right? You're a troublemaker, or you should just do what the system says. You should just follow the rules, as opposed to saying, no, there's a problem here. This is broken. Help me fix this. And what happens when you pull that on-don cord is your manager comes down, and you look at the problem that there is. And oftentimes we don't want our managers to come look over our shoulders, right? We want to stay heads down and keep going, so we'll ignore that there's a problem here. So the question then is, what happens if that number changes from 1,000 times a day to 700 times a day? The number drops to 700. What would we do in our organizations today in the United States, or wherever your organization is? I'm going to rhetorically answer the question. We would celebrate, right? We go, woo, yeah, we reduced our number of problems down to 700 instead of 1,000 times a day. We're improving. What really happens and happened at Toyota is they had an all-hands meeting. They called an all-hands meeting. The CEO or director of the plant called an all-hands meeting and said, hey, we are down to 700 times per day. That tells me one of two things. Either, A, people are afraid to pull the cord, and that's not okay. Feel comfortable. It's okay. We want to know when there's problem. Pushing ourselves to grow to the next level. Our systems are designed to be able to handle 1,000 pulls a day. Let's get that number back up. Look harder for problems. Reduce your inventories between steps. Let's try and make this system push to that next level. Let's get the number back up to 1,000 times per day that we have to stop the line. That is so different than our cultures in our organizations today. We want to eliminate the problems, right? We want to create workarounds so that the problem goes away. Our approach to problem solving is just that. It's a workaround solution, right? If we see a problem and we can create a workaround, that's a great thing, right? Quickly resolve the problem and make a workaround so that you can get around it. Another story from the Toyota Casa was there was a piece of an airplane manufacturing production line that was making propellers, and they were getting dings on them every time they went through the coating, it's like spray painting, the coating process. And they couldn't figure out why, so they said, okay, let's solve this problem. And immediately they were jumped straight into problem solving of what's the problem, what can we do? Well, let's increase the space between them. Let's put buffers on the chains so that so that they don't bump into each other, or the chain was actually what was bumping on them. let's do this, let's do that, let's figure out what's going on, let's solve this problem. And they had a bunch of solutions. And one of the people was Toyota Sensei, and they went and actually just sat there. They went to the manufacturing place, the piece of the factory where they were doing that, and watched for a couple of days what was going on. Tried to figure out, where are they getting dinged up? What's the problem? And what they found was that when they turned a particular corner, the propeller would swing just a little bit, and that little swing would make it bump into the other propeller, and that would be the ding, and they'd have to scrap this, very hundreds of thousands of dollars part, right? Every time you ding one, you have to scrap it. Ow. So he was able then to look at the problem and come up with the right solution for it, right? He took the time to really analyze the problem, to really get to know what was actually going on, and in a really deep kind of way, through deep observation, and produce the right solution. So often what we do in our organizations, in projects that I've been on, is try and quickly solve the problem so the problem will go away as fast as possible. And so we put in suboptimal solutions. Increasing the space between propellers on that production line would have solved the problem. However, it would also have slowed down production because you couldn't run as many props through as quickly. He was able to look at the actual problem and solve the problem with the one best true solution. And that's really what you want to do when your organization is struggling, is take the time and look at the real problem and figure out what is really going on here. So often we don't want to take the time and find the one real solution. We come up with one real solution for the problem. We want to implement the first solution that we come up with. Right? It is a solution. No denying that spacing out the props was a solution. But was it the best solution? What I want you to do is I want you to go to your organizations and think about, what is the best solution for the problem that we have in front of us here? What is it that will really solve the problems that we've got on hand? All right, I'm going to go check my Twitter feed. I don't see any questions from y'all. Reload my Twitter. Nope. Oh, look, somebody wants me to keynote. I'll have to go check that out. So I'm going to just ask that if you have questions right now about your implementations, what are you struggling with right now? Let's do some live one-on-one stuff here. What are the issues that you're dealing with right now that you could use some coaching on? It's open for you all to take advantage of it. Let me see. There's a question here. I'm having a hard time reading this. Come on, you. Questions. Sorry, folks. I'm struggling with my interface here. I'm not tweeting. Can I ask you through the webinar? Yes, you can ask me through the webinar chat, CJ. Go for it. You want to ask live on the phone? I could unmute your line. If you wanted to. No, that's okay. Okay, I'll leave you. Go ahead and type your questions in the chat or into Twitter, either one. Happy to help you out with whatever we've got, give you my thoughts about what's going on. Whoa, there's a bunch of them now. All right, let's see. From a culture perspective, my company is developing their own approach for introducing Agile into an organization. This has been done through training and orientation, full-day sessions. Sessions are good, but they're rather elementary. Although PMI as an organization and the PMP certification is proven value, I'm encountering perspective when discussing the ACP. The IT leaders have talked to it as the IT leaders I have talked to said the ACP certification is not yet credible, even coming from PMI. The leaders are looking for looking for CSM and not to generalize, but ITIL management principles over the ACP. What are you hearing across industries, nationally or globally, about early acceptance and cautious tales about PMI ACP? Okay, great question. Great question. So, what do you tell people when they're talking about the PMI ACP or CSM in particular? Wow, that's a pretty easy sell from my experience, because clearly they don't know what a CSM is. So a certified Scrum Master is someone who has gone to a 2-day class, who has taken a no possibility to fail quiz at the end of it, 25-question quiz, and paid a fee to the Scrum Alliance. That is all they had to do. They had to take a 2-day class and sit taking in the class, at the end of the class, take the no-fail exam and pay their fee, their membership fee to Scrum Alliance. They do not have to know anything in order to be a Scrum Master. You don't have to prove that you know anything. So credibility of general acceptance of the ACP versus the CSM, I don't even worry about that, whether it's accepted or not. It's like, look, the ACP was developed by Agile industry experts, not just by PMI. There were 2 people on the board of the ACP who were PMI members. The other folks were Agile industry experts, including people like Coburn, right? He was on the board. He was on the steering committee. You have to sit for a 120-question exam. You have to prove that you've had 1,500 hours of Agile project experience and 1,000 hours of general project, or 2,000 hours of general project experience in the past 3 to 5 years. 3 years for one and 5 years for the other. That by itself says more than the, quote, credibility of the certification. So let's not talk about certification. Let me put this in front of me. Try this. Put 2 lists together. One is the list of criteria for the CSM, and one is the list of criteria for the ACP. But don't say this is the criteria for CSM and this is the criteria for ACP. Don't put those labels on it. Just say, here's this list of criteria, here's another list of criteria. Which person would you hire? And then reveal what those criteria are for. Here's the list that you liked, the one that says you have to prove you've got experience. And there's another question there. That's a different one because they map much better. The CSM and the CSP, Certified Scrum Practitioner, and the ACP. So currently, in the past, to get the Certified Scrum Practitioner, you had to complete a rather detailed application that was then reviewed by other CSPs and Certified Scrum coaches and other folks. It was actually reviewed by them, and you were approved or denied based on that application. So you had to answer a bunch of questions. What would you do in these situations? What's your experience? Blah, blah, blah. Now, as of January or February, there's actually an exam that you have to take, which is better. You also have to prove that you have 2,000 hours of experience. I think it's 2,000 hours of experience, and some similar things to the ACP. Let me pull up I have a comparison on my webpage. Paused? What paused? Nothing Um, pulling up this comparison. So if they're comparing the ACP and the CSP, that's a comparison you can certainly make, but not the ACP and the the ACP and the CSM. CSM is widely, no, that's not the one I wanted, is widely known. The letters are Certified Scrum Master. Ooh, we've got a Scrum Master, but Scrum Master doesn't mean diddly. And I was on a board discussion 3 weeks ago at the Beyond Agile group, actually here in Seattle, where we had somebody from the Scrum Alliance, somebody from Scrum.org, and me representing the ACP, and we had a board discussion about it. And they all agreed that, yeah, CSM is really, they actually, the originators of the CSM didn't want to call it Scrum Master. They wanted to call it something else, you know, Certified Scrum Introduction or something like that. But marketing folks said, no, Certified Scrum Master is a better title. If you look here, CSM, the purpose behind the CSM, it's a course, is only the first step in becoming Agile. It's a lifelong journey incorporating Scrum principles and practices into the world. So they're saying that CSM course is a first step. Down here, CSP talks about a lot more. Today's competitive job market, primarily credentialing is important to identify professionals. So this is certifying you as a professional, right? The intent behind the CSP is to offer a clearly defined and well-respected credential to the Agile community. Here's the ACP. Demonstrates to employers your level of professionalism in Agile practices of project management, and they've actually gotten rid of the project management here in the new version. I'll have to change this on my site because they've acknowledged that that the ACP is not a project management certification. It is a Agile practitioner certification. They want to increase your professional versatility and hold a certification that is more credible than the existing entry-level training or exam-only based offerings. So this last statement was in response to the CSP. At the time of the creation of the ACP, did not have an exam. And so it wasn't necessarily so credible as a certification in the market because it really wasn't, there wasn't an exam-based, knowledge-based testing of your expertise. So if you go on the website, whitewaterprojects.com, and you want to check this out, here's a point-by-point breakdown of the ACP versus the CSP and the CSM. ACP in the middle here, and the Certified Scrum Professional on the right. Great, the computer's locked up. You can get a good sense of how they balance one another that way. All right. I hope that answered, or CJ, if it creates more questions for you, let me know. Let's see. I have another question right here from Carol. In my company, we have some teams like engineering and services doing Agile, while others, like product marketing and product management, this causes some painful disconnects. Can you provide examples of discussions to have with the leadership and management to help them understand the benefits of having those other teams converted over to Agile? Let's see. So you have folks in marketing and product management that aren't doing Agile. And what are the painful disconnects in particular that you're running into so that I can better address the question here? Because I know of lots of painful disconnects that I've seen. I want to make sure I'm addressing the ones that you have. And while you're speedily typing in those, I'll kind of generally address some of the things that I have seen. So one of the problems with having one set of people doing Agile and another set of people doing waterfall is dealing with the touch points or external dependencies, they're often called, where you have the one group that is responsible for a deliverable, and the other group is the Agile people who are iterating and not doing long-range planning. So that's one problem. The other problem is the external organizations wanting to only be involved in, for example, testing or acceptance testing for the product or project when it's done, right? When it's ready to go to production, then we will do our testing and we'll go forward. So are those the kind of things, Carol, that you're seeing as the problems? I can certainly go into those. I'll start with the second one and go on to the first one. So the problem with organizations wanting to wait until the very end is for getting involved, right? So they want to have their input up front and then wait to the very end to have do their testing. It happens because they're used to it, right? That's what's happened in the past, and so that's the way we want to see things going forward. And how do you address that? I think having people come to the demos is very helpful. I know that they don't want to be involved, but when they start to see early releases of something that they asked for and seeing it working right away, you'll actually get some energy from them and some excitement around what it is that you're doing. The problem is just getting them to come, because they so often don't want to spend the time up front to get out there to see it. With that, you can look at some of the things we had talked about a few podcasts ago, or a few, webinars ago, where you look at the business value. So early delivery of working software results in lower costs, increased revenue, those kinds of things. So to talk with them about the fact that actually being involved earlier is better for the company in many ways, and that if we can deliver this product with a minimally marketable feature set, MMF, then we can get this product to market and start getting some revenue back on it early, and show them the math that says, look at how much this does for the company financially. So those are a couple of ways. Let's see. The other teams using Waterfall tend to work on longer time-framed work plans. Yep, doing release activities out of phase with the actual software releases. Yep. There's often confusion for customers since they're seeing new things announced long after they've actually been existing in production activities out of phase with the actual software releases. Okay. Often confusion for customers since they're seeing new things announced long after they've actually. Oh, so the marketing folks aren't actually marketing it in a timely fashion with the production, with the actual release to production. Interesting. Wow. That's a good problem to have, I guess. Though it would be confusing if I was a customer and you said, hey, we've got this new feature called bolding in Word now. You can use this bold feature. But all of a sudden, you're getting marketing, but you've been using it for 6 months already. Yeah, that would be a problem. Well, I think that by itself isn't that enough argument to take to management and say, hey, look, we need to get these folks in marketing up to speed and integrated more with us, because we're releasing things out into production and they're not marketing them until 6 months later. So we need to get in sync with one another. I'm wondering if, and you're saying seeing things throw over the fence to the contact points is a big problem. I'm wondering if one of the issues that you've got isn't so much that the waterfall teams needs to become more agile, which they may, probably do, but that your agile teams need to do more planning, right? So the, quote, throw it over the wall thing shouldn't be too much of a problem, and correct me if I'm not addressing quite the problem that you're talking about. But the quote, throwing it over the wall problem, right? So I'm an agile team. I've developed, and now I've gotten this particular piece of the functionality finished, and now it's going to go to my sales and marketing folks. That shouldn't be as much of a problem if I've been able to tell my sales and marketing folks that in 6 months, in 9 months, in 12 months, we anticipate having these features done. Here's what we'll have. And oftentimes, Agile folks that are implementing Agile for the first time don't understand that you do that in Agile. It's just done acknowledging that what we're making are assumptions, not absolute statements, right? So we are saying our intention is to have these features, our intention is to have these services by thus and such a date out 12 months from now. But it's not an absolutism that this is absolutely what's going to happen, right? So often I have Agile groups that, I have Agile groups that think we have no planning in Agile. And that's just flat not true. What we do is we have a level of ambiguity that increases over time, right? Sort of like standing in the fog in San Francisco, and you're looking at a street light that's 2 blocks away. When you're 2 blocks away in the fog, it's just kind of a glow out there, and I can see that glow, and I can describe to you that glow and the color of the glow, but I can't really tell you what that street light looks like. And as I walk closer to that street light, it becomes more clear over time. I can see now that it's one of those oblong bulb lamps in that street light fixture. And as I get closer, I can see that there's a fairing around the top of it, and it's a filigreed hook that the lamp is attached to. And now I can start to see the pole as I'm getting even closer. And I can tell you now I'm 2 feet away from the pole. I can actually see the pole through this fog and tell you what color the pole is and describe it in great detail. So in an Agile approach, we recognize that there is this fog between us and the vision of the product and where we're going. But we don't just not look at that light out there, right? We have to know where we're going. We have to make plans to get there. No one would ever say, okay, I might like that idea. Because they would just get change orders right? But we're asking executives to develop $1 million worth of software without one? Come on. That's not acceptable. Agile folks need to understand that there is an amount of upfront planning that is absolutely necessary. Absolutely. So I'm hoping that answered the question, at least generally for you. Maybe we could talk more specifically. Oh, good. So anybody else out there with questions right now? Let's see, did I miss any that got typed in here? Don't see any that I missed there. See if there's any tweeters tweets out here. Be careful what you say. I don't see any tweets out here at the moment. Nope. All right. So getting back to talking about culture, I think both of these get down to, you can talk about in terms of a culture of learning, constant learning. understanding, what certifications do you need or not need. It's a lot like going back to the question earlier about the ACP and the CSM. It's a lot like looking at Scrum as an answer. You're looking then at the certification as an answer. You don't really want to look at the certification as an answer. You want to look at what is this. What's the overall solution that we're looking for? What are the skill sets that this person is bringing to us? And what does that certification mean in regard to those skill sets is an interesting question. Similarly with the Agile and not Agile teams, Agile doesn't necessarily mean that you just work in iterations, right? I work with folks who are using a Kanban approach, and that's an odd use of the word Kanban we use. I put it in quotes these days, but that's because I'm dealing more and more with lean folks, and they understand what Kanban means. But I work with folks who use Kanban, and they don't have iterations in Kanban, and so there is no issue with throwing it over the wall problem, because there's no iteration problem. Having multiple iterations or time boxes that you have to hit the end of a time box that's synced up. You can have your release anytime in a Kanban approach. So we talked about Kanban the last time. So the issue goes back to really what problem are you trying to solve as an organization, and let's look at those together. If I was in your shoes with the teams, the sales and marketing teams versus the, what team was it? IT teams, right? The delivery, engineering services. I would get those groups of people together and say, okay, how are we going to address this? And let's come up with, let's take the time as an organization, us here, to really look at this problem, like sit back and really figure out what's really the problem. I mean, what's wrong with throwing it over the wall at someone? I'm not going to say that there's not things wrong with it. Don't hear that. What I am saying is what's really wrong with throwing it over the wall. Not just that it's bad, quote, bad to throw it over the wall. What makes it bad? Timing? Waste? What waste is created by throwing it over the wall? Waiting waste? Overproduction waste? What is it? And let's really look at what the fundamental problem is that we're dealing with, and open up the hood of the car and look at how the engine really works and really find that one solution. One of the things that they talk about in Toyota is when you have observed long enough, the solution will be obvious, right? So when you have taken the time to step back and observe long enough to see what is really the problem that we are trying to address here, what's really going on, the solution will become very obvious, and you'll go, oh, this is the one solution that makes perfect sense. So I would encourage you to, I know it's impossible, it's really hard to do when you're down in the weeds of dealing with a project and the day-to-day ins and outs of that. But as much as you can, try and step back, step out, take a day and block your calendar and spend time with people from both groups, and maybe make meetings with individuals, and then make a group meeting where you all come together and look at this, and maybe do like an A3 kind of thing. You can look that up on how you do A3s. But these are ways of succinctly discussing a problem and getting lots of input from lots of different people for how to go about problem resolution. And take the time to really look at the problem and come up with that one answer for your organization. It's going to be different than what it is for another organization. So, okay. Coming back for more questions. Who do we have here? Anybody else have questions? Looking around, looking Twitter? Nope. All right. Well, let's see if you have no more questions. It is 11:45. We may stop here a little early. Oh, you're welcome. And we'll call it a day. I'm glad I was able to talk with you and address some of these questions. Was this a useful format where we can just take time and do Q&A? If it was, drop me a note and let me know. I like giving you the opportunity to just share what your questions are and get them addressed one-on-one. Good. All right, I'm seeing positive feedback. Good. Yeah, it was great. Thank you. Nice. Good. All right. Well, maybe we'll do it again in a couple months. I'm going to be talking in the next couple months. I'll probably dive into some of this culture stuff a little bit more. I'm not sure what else we'll do, but we'll address some more problems here as we go forward. I wanted to share with you all just a couple more things before we take off. I have, this is fun. I have classes coming up in a couple of different places. I have one in Oslo next week. So if any of you are in Oslo, love to see you there. If you're not, I have a class coming up in San Diego at the end of the month. If anybody is looking for some vacation time and wants to have their company pay for their airfare, be an easy way to fly down, stay for the class. Here's the class. It's on the 27th, 28th, and 29th, and that puts it here. You could take a couple days, make it a weekend, and you probably get some time off for 4th of July. Could be some good time there. But it's an exciting class. Some of the folks that are on this call were actually at my last class in Madison. Good to see you guys. And I have another class in July in Phoenix. So if you want to get really hot, you can come with me to Phoenix, Arizona. And there's still some early bird seating there. If not, I'll be in Seattle on September 19th, 20th, and 21st. So thank you, everybody. And I will talk with you all sometime soon. All right. Bye-bye.